I would like to quote from Rig Veda: "There is only one truth. Only men describe it in different ways." With this, we are privileged to have with us Dr. Omji Upadhyay, the Director, Research and Publication Division, and of course, the collaborative partner and encouragingly collaborative partner of Kash Foundation Mumbai, uh, Indian Council of Historical Research, Delhi. OMG has been always on the encouraging front at Kash Foundation Mumbai, and it was between me and OMG this entire churning of ideas, in fact, got into the process, and we developed this entire pattern of a symposium concerns complexities and dialogues in religious philosophy. So OMG is with us from Delhi, and OMG will discuss with us today or present on coexistence, compassion, and redemption, essence of Hindu or Sanatan way of life. OMG, thank you for your time and thank you for the collaboration with Indian Council of Historical Research. We are eagerly waiting for your presentation, sir. Please proceed.
And music, Ma Saraswati, distinguished speakers on the forum, learned participants, and the chief architect of this international webinar, one of the most dynamic personalities I have ever met, Dr. Avkas Jadavji, and his entire team. Namaskar to all of you. Let me start with a sloka of Yajurveda. Sa prathama Sanskriti Vishwavara. That is, we Indians are the conveyor or bearer of the oldest culture in the world. Rigveda instructs us that Indram Vardhanto Apturah Krinavanto Vishwamaryam. That is, be active, spread the message of greatness of God, do work for prosperity and make the entire world Arya. That is great. And also that Ayam Nijah Paroveti Gadana Lagu Chetasam Udara Charitanantu Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam. Yours and mine's comes from misery thoughts. Great people assume entire world as a family. Now I'll directly come to the definition of dharma. As you all know that it is derivative of root dhri, that is dharyate iti dharma. There is no synonym in the English language, as I feel, of dharma because it's quite different from religion. So dharyate iti dharma. In Hinduism, or Hindu way of life, or Sanatan way of life, dharma signifies behaviors in accord with rita and includes duties, rights, law, conduct, virtues, and in toto, right way of living. It's purely a code of conduct. In Manu Smriti, Manu enumerates 10 characteristics of dharma. That is dhriti, kshama, damosteyam, saucham, indriya nigraha, dhir vidya, satyamakrodho, dashakam, dharma, lakshanam. That is patience, forgiveness, to control the desires, asteya, non-stealing, purity within and outside, observing our senses, intellect, knowledge, truth, and calmness. And when we compare with the Dhamma of Buddhism and the concept of Dharma in Jainism, it is quite akin. Means all these three are quite akin. So let us come down to some important features of Hindu Dharma or Sanatan Dharma. Sometimes seeing the number of gods and goddesses, Hinduism is considered to be a polytheistic tradition. No. We have always been a very mature, a very grand, and a very ancient pluralistic tradition. It is a very powerful term, pluralism, pluralistic tradition. It is a very powerful term. It says different individuals, different social groups will make spiritual progress suited to their own background, their own temperament, etc. In fact, not many gods, but many ways to become spiritual is the central teaching of Hinduism. If I say the concluding line, you can say, If we wish to reduce friction in the name of religion or dharma, then our faith, then listen to the central feature of our tradition, that is pluralism. That is, people of different beliefs coexists with full dignity. There are several modes, several paths for spiritual upliftment, be it monotheism, be it henotheism, and even non-theistic mode. Hinduism allows or permits these all. I'll now focus on two aspects of Hinduism. One is monotheism, that is personality-oriented Hinduism. You may worship Brahma, you may worship Vishnu, you may worship Shiva, you may worship Shakti, Kartikeya, Ganesha, Surya, whoever. It is one part, one aspect. And second dimension is principle-oriented Hinduism. We believe in all-knowing, all-compassionate, and all-powerful God. Then a question comes automatically in our mind that if the God is all-knowing, all-compassionate, all-powerful, then how the sufferings of the world will be defined. And here comes the answer in Hinduism, that seeing and serving the God in humanity is the teaching of this principle-oriented Hinduism. Though we need to rethink that whether we are practicing this nowadays or not. In fact, no doubt at one point of time, for long period of time, we practiced this principle or principle-oriented Hinduism. But we forgot ourselves due to long slavery of more than 7.5 centuries, or more than that. We really forgot that who we are. We forget that the phrase of Aham Brahmasmi, Tattva Tvamasi. And if Aham Brahmasmi, that who is Sudra? Who can be downtrodden? Who can be termed as downtrodden? So, in fact, Hinduism teaches us spiritual humanism. The depth of Hindu teaching is that it not only teaches us that how to live with each other, but it teaches us how to live for each other. That is very important. Hindu or Sanatana way of life clearly differs from other faiths in at least two ways, as I feel. First of all, it doesn't believe in any dogma, and outrightly rejects the exclusive claim of any individual, however highly evolved, to the monopoly of truth. It believes that the Supreme Being may be approached through several paths, such as jnana, that is knowledge, bhakti, that is devotion, karma, that is action, and even yoga, that is physical control. In fact, Hindu way of life is not founded by any individual. It has grown or evolved naturally. Hinduism is hardly a dogma, but a working hypothesis of human conduct adapted to different stages of spiritual development and different conditions of life. It is undeniable that a law of power higher than human regulates events. We may all have our different definitions of the law of power. But beyond all the variety of definitions, there would be a certain sameness which would be unmistakable, for the root is one. Gandhiji, Mohandas Karamchand Gandhiji, describes the law as that undefinable something which we all feel, but which we do not know. If it were possible for the human tongue to give the fullest description, as Gandhiji says, of that law of power in one word, Gandhiji would call it truth, as it tends to disarm any criticism naturally. Now I'm coming to the scientific approaches. The scientist tries to understand the ultimate through a series of steps, meticulously analyzing each step. But in ancient India, Indians, rishis, sages, they went straight to the reality with the help of certain mental paradigms, which we call meditation. when Professor Lab sir was speaking, I was thinking over the advice of the Lord Buddha to Kalamasa. In fact, it was also in keeping with the scientific ideal. He said that do not accept what I have said to you because it has been so said in the past. Do not accept it because it has been handed down by tradition. Even do not accept it because it is also in the holy scriptures. Do not accept it because it can be proved by inference. Do not accept it thinking it is worldly wisdom. Do not accept it because it seems to be plausible. Do not accept it because it is said by a famous or holy monk. But if you find that it appeals to your sense of discrimination and conscience as being conducive to your benefit and happiness, then only accept it and live up to it. The Hindu classical religious philosophy is maybe classified under two groups: Shrutis and Smritis. Smritis including Dharma Shastra. Shrutis, which include Veda and Upanishads, contain knowledge of reality as it is, which can be verified and is universal in its character. As such, it may be characterized as philosophia perennis, that is, perennial philosophy. One more point is very important to note that no wars in the history of the civilization, no wars have been fought in the name of Hinduism. It includes Buddhism and Jainism also, unlike the medieval religious crusades between Islamic and Christian potentates. Nor have there been any inquisitions in Hinduism for questioning any religious belief. So the flexibility of Hindu civilization enables her at once to renew herself in terms of her own essential nature and to change herself so as to bring herself in harmony with the form of age in which we live. In plain terms, the ancient Indian spirit takes on a new form without ceasing to be itself. India's religious have all been natural religions. They have grown and prospered naturally. Another distinctive feature of Hinduism is the doctrine of karma and rebirth. Transmigration is not a theory but a fact. Gandhiji also believed in further life and in the continuity of karma through successive births. What we sow here, we must reap here and elsewhere. There is no escape of all. We have to reap what we sow. The law of karma is relentless. However, repentance, even during one's last moments, will wash away sin and sterilize it on consequences. Among Hinduism's contributions to the world are the ideas of the man's identity with the Dharma creation and the four asramas. I remember one statement of Max Weber's. He wrote once that two societies can never come up. That is India and China. Why? Because they believe in karma and rebirth. In the same manner, in 1853, Karl Marx wrote two articles in Washington Post, if I remember well, or New York Times, I suppose. I have got confused between these two papers, but he wrote two articles in a series, and he wrote that India is a peculiar country. Something very wrong with the society because they are worshipping cows and monkeys. They never came to India, but they wrote about India exhaustively, you can say. They never came to India. They never tried to understand our religion or philosophy, our things. They never lived, they never felt that. And perhaps this is the reason that Swami Vivekananda, during his lectures in US and Europe, it is on record 79 times that after delivering the entire lecture, he used to say that, okay, fine, I have told you these things, I have just discussed all these things with you, but you Westerners will never understand this. He spoke this 79 times, it is on record. So, if I speak about essence of Hinduism, I would like to quote Gandhiji. In one of his speeches, Gandhiji spoke about the essence of Hinduism. He spoke that I have fixed upon one mantra that I am going to recite as containing the whole essence of Hinduism. He further says that many of you, I think, know the Ishopanishad. I read it years ago with translation and commentary, but it didn't then captivate me as it has done during the past few months. And I have now come to the final conclusion that if all the Upanishads and all the other scriptures happened all of sudden to be reduced to ashes, and if only the first words in the Ishopanishads were left intact in the memory of Hindus, Hinduism would live forever. Now this mantra divides itself into four parts. The first part is Isa Vashyamidam Sarvam Yat Kinch Jagatyam Jagat. It means that all this that we see in this great universe is pervaded by God. Or in other terms, this entire universe is God's expansion. Then come to second and third part, which read together as I read them, Tena Tyaktena Bhunjitha. I divide these into two and translate them thus, renounce it and enjoy it. There is another rendering which means the same thing, though enjoy what he gives you. Then follows the final and most important part, Ma Gridha Kasvisvidyanam, which means do not covet anybody's wealth or possession. All the other mantra of that ancient Upanishad are a commentary or an attempt to give us the full meaning of this first mantra. It seems to me to satisfy the cravings of the socialist and the communist at the same time, of the philosophers and the economist. I venture to suggest to all who do not belong to Hindu faith that it satisfied their cravings also. And if it is true, you need not take anything in Hinduism which is inconsistent with or contrary to the meaning of this mantra. And if you believe that God pervades everything that he has created, you must believe that you cannot enjoy anything that is not given by him. And seeing that he is the creator of his numberless children, it follows that you cannot covet anybody's possession. If you think that you are one of his numerous creatures, it behoves you to renounce everything and lay it at his feet. That means that the act of renunciation of everything is not a mere physical renunciation, but represents a second or new birth. The basis of this entire philosophy or the Hindu or Sanatana way of life is the Purusartha. Purusartha Chatushtaya we call it. That is objectives of life. They are the goals of human existence, the soul's real purpose. That is dharma. I have discussed about, first one is dharma. I have discussed about this you earlier. Second one is artha, that is livelihood or wealth, objective and virtuous pursuit of wealth for livelihood, obligations and economic prosperity. Kama, that is desire or sensual pleasure, desire, wish, passion, longing, pleasure of the senses, the aesthetic enjoyment of life, affection or love with or without sexual connotations. This is kama. And moksha, the ultimate goal of life. The moksha is associated with liberation from sorrow, sufferings, and sansara, that is birth and rebirth cycle. 4 ashramas, that is brahmacharya ashram, grihastha ashram, vanaprastha ashram, and sannyasa ashram. It is age-based life stages. And 16 sanskara, that is garbhadhan till anteshtu sanskara. 16 sanskara were combined with these goals of life. I am very sure that there is not even a single problem in the world which has no solution or way out in Hinduism or Hindu way of life. For example, these we are always, means all the time we are thinking about this pandemic which the world is facing nowadays. So these epidemics have not been new to India. And our ancient Ayurvedic Grantha, if I just quote only 3 Grantha, Susrut Samhita, Charak Samhita, and Astanga Hridaya of Acharya Vagbhat, they have dealt with the pandemics and their nidana, you can say, the causations, means the reasons, and there it has been said that the lobha is the real reason of, or adharma is the real reason of all these pandemics and epidemics. And it is quite surprising. I will not go in the details of Sutrasthan Tritiya of Charak Samhita and chapter 6 of Susrut Samhita. But if you compare with the present day, what we are doing today to just fight the epidemic or pandemic, it is quite the same in the ancient scriptures. I'd close my deliberation. I'll close my deliberation with the Swami Vivekananda's quotation, what he spoke in the Chicago Convention, that is, sectarianism, bigotry, and its horrible descendants, fanaticism, have long possessed this beautiful earth. They have filled the earth with violence, drenched it often and often with human blood, destroyed civilizations, and sent whole nations to despair. Had it not been for these horrible demons, human society would be far more advanced than it is now. But their time has come, and I fervently hope that the bell that tolled this morning by Avkash Jadhav ji and Khas Foundation in collaboration with all these 6 organizations may be the death knell of all fanaticism, of all persecutions with the sword of or with the pen, and of all uncharitable feelings between persons wending their way to the same goal. I congratulate him and his team, and I close my deliberation with this sloka that Sarve Bhavantu Sukhinah, Sarve Santu Niramaya, Sarve Bhadrani Pasyantu, Ma Kaschid Dukh Bhag Bhavet, Tanme Manah Shiva Sankalpamastu. Namaskar. Dhanyavad. Thank you.